I got an email here, RAD@radradio.com, earlier this morning from Raymond.
Hey, Raymond.
He knew that Ian from the Tech to You family would be here to talk about mainly cybersecurity, cyber hacking. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Hi, Ian.
But he wanted to sneak in a really quick question about Fire Up Esports Lounge.
Excellent.
He said, this might be in bad taste, so that's why I thought we'd lead with it.
No, I always love a good plug.
He says, I got a question for Ian about Fire Up Esports Lounge. My daughter is 4 and loves Mario Kart, but she has some challenges that make her uncomfortable in big crowds, loud music, etc. Is it possible to rent a private room for only 2 people for a daddy-daughter date, and how would I do that?
Yeah,
so
totally. That's awesome. We actually see quite a bit of that. Hey, you can just call us. Easiest go to the website, fireup.gg. Our phone number's there. You can even submit a request for a reservation. Those actually go directly to me. I'll book it for you.
And this is not going to be something where the person on the other end of the phone is going to go, what the hell are you talking about? We've never heard of this
we have a
before."
ton of private rooms.
Do this all the time.
It's very, very common to say, yep, we want a private room, and they're soundproof too. Little note there. So
Perfect.
if anybody's overly sensitive to loud noises, it's a great option.
Perfect. So to the point that you're here, we actually started getting emails last week after, I think it was on Thursday, where I did the big deep dive into the Ukraine-Russia thing. And then as we continue to keep people updated, I think it was Friday over the weekend that all blurs together for me. I know we were talking during the break that you've been consuming a lot of this, not just news but also on social media and stuff. But then Putin made that threat where he overtly said, if you come after us, if the West gets in our way, you're going to see something like you've never seen before. Which a lot of people went, okay, he means nukes, but a lot of the rest of us went, no. He means cyber warfare. So let's start at 30,000 feet. You've been blowing this horn for years on this show.
Totally.
The idea that other countries, particularly Russia and China, in that order, have been trying to hack us and have successfully hacked a variety of things over the course of the years is already happening. So is it? Do you find it more likely? Are you more worried or concerned about it for any reason, or is this just business as usual?
Yes and no. I think that there is certainly a heightened sense of concern for good reason. But at the same time, this is nothing new. When it comes to threats from another nation, I won't pretend to be an expert, but I would imagine that infrastructure is probably a primary target, and that's certainly not my area of expertise. But when it comes to affecting our economy, there's a lot of ways to do that, and one of them is impacting financial systems and large companies. And so,
have they shown the ability to do that?
Yeah.
So the reason that you get more concerned, or anyone gets more concerned, is this is a bullet in his chamber.
It is, and he fired it. So what we're seeing already is that large corporations all use databases of some kind to store their information. Databases can come in many different forms, but ultimately they're all stored on a computer. And that goes for Tech to You, for RAD, for FireUp. We all have databases of different sorts. Ours are all small in comparison to somebody like IBM. Our databases are stored in these formats, which are susceptible to corruption, deletion. One common thing is holding data hostage. So you basically encrypt it all so you can't read it, and then you say, all right, you pay us this much money, we'll give you a key so you can unlock all your data. This has become more popular in just the last week. In fact, even just this weekend, I was having a conversation with one of our lead developers on doing some additional backups just as a precaution, off-site, offline backups, just in case for some of our more critical functions. There have been reports of databases being completely eliminated from large companies that are now having to revert to backups, assuming that they have them, which in most cases, if they're a large enough target, they will have a backup. And so there is already impact. Now,
is there any, in that example, where a database is deleted? Obviously, if the company doesn't have a backup, they're kind of stupid. Yeah. But is there any harm there to the consumer, to us, to the individuals in just that example? Yeah,
there can be, depending on what they're attacking. So without revealing too much, Tech to You has had opportunity to be involved in a lot of different businesses, infrastructure included. And it's scary sometimes for us to see the lack of security and backup that some of our very relied upon resources actually have. So banking systems, for example, that we have been in a unique position to help them with. We've found significant security flaws, mixed customer data with banking data, employee logins mixed with banking logins. A lot of what we put together as technicians is we hobble things together to demonstrate, hey, we can do this. This is cool. Look at these features. And then you kind of have the money guy who says, great, you already did it. Slap that all together and make it live. And it's like, well, our position as developers is, wait, let's make sure we build it out correctly so it's secure. But what happens in a lot of cases is you get over eager parts of a business that say, no, it's already done. Let's make it live. And there you end up with significant security flaws. That's usually what we've seen.
So now what you just described, unless I misunderstood, that sounds like just incompetence within the company.
Absolutely.
That's not even hacking. That makes me feel like they're much more susceptible to a cyber attack.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. And so the majority of reason why we see failure for proper backups, or if businesses failing because of security issues, is almost always as a part of negligence. I mean, more than anything, it's negligence or not being cautious. And that would lead into kind of the main things I wanted to talk about things that we can do to not be negligent, and take a little caution on an individual level, rather than just these businesses who need to be doing things to protect their clients and also their own databases. So just some basic stuff is like not clicking on everything that's emailed to you.
Oh my God, yes.
So,
dear God.
And that's tough. Like, you had a story not long ago about a family member who had fallen for a scam, and in fact, my dad was selling a truck this weekend, and this person was like, "Hey, put your VIN number in this thing," and it's there's scams everywhere, and I feel like I've converted from the tech guy to the anti-scam guy over the last
they make
decade.
It look so real too.
Totally.
To confuse people, and I try to educate my father-in-law the best I even know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, when in doubt, don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly. But here are some things you can kind of look for, that this isn't your bank.
Yeah.
That sent you this.
Yeah, that's like the biggest thing is a lot of phishing scams are probably one of the easiest ways to manipulate someone into giving you a password. It's not like in most cases when a hack happens that there was some nerd behind a computer that spent 2 weeks trying to crack your password. That can happen, but it's significantly less common than just sending you an email that looks like it's from your bank, and it says, "Oh, you need to update your password," and you go, "Oh, I guess I got to update my password," and you click on it and you type in your username and your current password, and now they have access to your bank. And this is almost always how these vulnerabilities begin, is from a very basic form of, we'll call it social engineering, just manipulating somebody into giving up data.
And that example, which we have talked about this over and over again when you've been here, there's no protection for that other than common sense. There isn't something that you can install. There isn't something that we can do to stop people from going, "Oh, gee, I guess I should go check on this and change my password." That's just us falling for it.
For the most part, that is true. There are ways to back it up, or back yourself up a little bit, even from your own potential mistakes. Is two-factor authentication, which is another one of my points. So whenever you sign into an account, it's like, "Hey, enable multi-factor authentication," and they use this very unfriendly phrase, two-factor authentication. It's not something that people hear, and it sounds real sexy, like, "Oh yeah. let me do this thing," right? Two-factor authentication is something that I can't stress enough. It's one of the best ways to protect yourself from yourself. So when you make that mistake of clicking on a link and typing in a password that you shouldn't have, and it goes to the person who shouldn't have it, then they're using this easy method to get access to your stuff. So now they just go to that website, they type in the username and password that you gave them, but then it sends you a two-factor code to your phone that they don't have access to.
So just to ungeek this, to really dumb it down, because you're right, even I was like, two-factor, what the hell?
Yeah.
But then when you hear it, so you've got a password, and you got a username and a password, and you put it in, but you're not in yet, because now your bank, let's say, they're going to send you a text code to your cell phone.
That's right.
And they're going to say, put this in. And if you get that code from your bank and you're not logging into your bank, you're like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
And first of all, the hackers can't get into your account, and then you also notify your bank.
That's right.
hey, we got a problem here. As opposed to, so would the opposite of that be the whole, like, let's say you're using your phone or your laptop on a regular basis, and it always gives you the option to remember me on this site.
Yeah.
So all I do is I click on the app or the bank. I don't have to do any type of authentication other than with my phone, maybe my face. Is that stupid?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that is, I'm going to lean into kind of the more paranoid part for just a second.
Awesome.
Which is, if you store your password anywhere, it can get cracked easier. If you have two-factor authentication, which texts you a code, somebody who's savvy enough can use, I won't get into the details, but they can effectively gather your text messages and still get that code. So, to a degree, it kind of feels like, well, God, no matter what I do, there's someone, and that is true. If you're targeted, it can be very difficult to protect yourself. But the majority of scams and people get, like, having vulnerabilities with banking systems or anything serious, they almost all begin with something so simple, which is just some basic form of social engineering. So that second step of protecting yourself with a text message code, a two-factor code, using a QR scanning backup code, whatever it is, whatever the system offers you, do it, because it will help most of the time.
So to get ready for this, of course, because everybody's writing these articles, I found an article with one of these geeks like you, and I say that affectionately.
God, appreciate it.
And they refer to what you're talking about as cyber hygiene.
Sure.
And to piggyback off what you're talking about with multi-factor authentication, this is something that normal people hear all the time and we pay no attention to. The strong, unique password thing.
Yeah.
I mean, every year we get the exact same story. The most popular password in America is 0123456. Yeah. Or everybody uses their last name or whatever it is. How are you a Nazi over this? Like, you have got to have better passwords.
So my style is, you got to be careful with the Nazi comment with the shaved head, by the way. People get their own impression.
Everything going on in the world right now.
I am and I'm not. I definitely, as far as a technician is concerned, most technicians will err on the side of extreme caution. Have a 20-digit alphanumeric password, and they're not wrong. I mean, that is definitely a good practice. Is it necessary all the time? No, not really. There are convenient ways to accomplish that. I have systems that I use with really basic passwords because I don't care if somebody gets access to it. It's just something that is, okay, you took that over, whatever. I'll get another free
your
account.
PG&E account.
Yeah, who cares?
Oh, no.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
Pay my bill.
So So there's things like that. And I mean, to put it in perspective, I personally have something like, 300 accounts saved in my password managers, and a lot of them are just totally useless. But the things that are important, what I'll do is I'll usually generate a 20-digit alphanumeric password. I will, or bigger, and I will use two or even a three-factor authentication, depending on the system and how important it is. So, like, for example, what Jeff and I do with our customers' databases is kind of, it sounds like ridiculous. It sounds like paranoia, but
not today.
No, not right now. It doesn't. Yeah.
In fact, we just got a question about this. You can email us, rad@radradio.com. You can call 888-989-9811. We're with Ian from Tech to You. She says, I store my passwords in my notes section on my iPhone. Is this a bad idea?
Yeah, it is.
Damn. I do that. I do. All right,
Kyle.
What am I supposed to do? Write them on a piece of paper, keep them in my desk? I'll do that.
A safe is better than
a
desk,
safe.
I think. But so notes. So think iPhone for a second. Let's say again, social engineering is such a huge component of what we're dealing with. I can't stress that enough. It almost always begins with somebody manipulating you. So if somebody has physical possession of your phone because you're out at the bar and you left it on the bar for a second, all they got to do is point that phone at your face. You're not going to notice it.
Yeah.
Now your phone is unlocked, and it stays unlocked. It's not like it locks itself after a minute of searching around in your phone. As soon as somebody has physically unlocked your phone, they have access to every single thing that's inside of it, right? So another way to protect yourself is like the password manager that I use. Again, this is not recommended on the extreme security side of things, is to keep your password manager in your phone. I do it for convenience. I don't recommend the practice officially, but you should have an additional password on that, which is the main one that you remember. This is the long password that you won't forget because all your passwords are stored there.
So is it dumb? So if you have Apple products, and they'll recommend a password, and it's this long.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like But I'm not going to remember
No,
those.
you won't.
Right? Like, it's only if I continue to use that same, it'll remember for me. So is it stupid to turn those down and create your own?
No, I certainly wouldn't say it's dumb. I think that because there's a balance between convenience and security, and I think we all know that. And as tech professionals, we acknowledge that it's not realistic to just have this piece of paper in your pocket all the time with your 20-digit passwords on it, right? Apple's integrated keychain is what they call it. They generate that password for you. Those are fine to use, and Apple does a really good job of keeping those secure also. I
just never remember that. Right? Even write them down. I'm like,
you can source them in your phone. There is a place you can go to your settings, and there's a thing called passwords, and then it'll scan your face, and then you can see your big list of passwords.
Then I can see that. Oh,
yeah, so if you had to say you generate it on your phone and you want to sign in on your computer or Gary's computer or whatever, you can open up passwords.
My husband's shaking his head right now.
He's like, there's no way Don's signing in on my computer.
I do think the piece of paper in the safe is the best one, though, because then it's like that's the only place where it's written down, and it's somewhere where you can physically go in and say, okay, it's still here.
Yeah, it's something that so this is another kind of a sidebar, but when it comes to things in the safe, that's sort of a joke, sort of serious, but an actual serious one is almost all of the accounts that you have that are of significant value, a personal email account that you use for everything, or a password, like a password storage tool. They have backup codes. You guys might have seen those. Sometimes they offer like, hey, do you want to save these backup codes before you continue? The answer to that is always yes. Print them out, put them in a safe. It is really good practice to have those backup codes. I can't tell you how many times I've heard stories of people saying, that saved my business, that saved my account, just having those backup codes if they were needed.
We just got this question from Carrie. It says, I keep my passwords in a password-protected Excel sheet. Is that safe?
Password-protected Excel sheets are pretty easy to break. So we've had to do that for a customer who forgot that password. They brought it into us so that we could literally crack the encryption on her Excel sheet and get her back our passwords. So no, that unfortunately is not very secure.
This is all great, and we can get back to it. We got a few questions, but none of this helps if they can get to our banks. If they can hack the bank, and I keep using the bank as the example, the FBI has issued all sorts of warnings to all of American companies. The website for several Ukrainian embassies, including the one in Washington, D.C., were shut down yesterday following several cyber attacks. So
oh, God.
We're talking about, and we should be talking about, individual things that we can do. But I think a lot of people sit around and they think, well, if Chase gets hacked, that's their problem. They got to pay me my money.
It's not their problem. It is our problem. Yeah, I mean, it's not a common thing for us to experience, especially as Americans. We have kind of a luxury of most of our banking systems being FDIC insured, but also pretty secure, well vetted systems. But again, I've personally seen banking systems which are sketchy, and I hate to say it just because it's my only experience. It's the smaller credit unions that you might want to be careful with, and especially making sure that you do have two-factor authentication on your bank account login. Now, that all said, certain bank account logins don't do much. My Chase account, there's quite a bit you can do. You can set up wire transfers and ACHs and things like that. You can have money stolen, but a lot of smaller banks, I've used local credit unions. You log into their bank account and they show you your balance, and you can maybe set up a bill pay. And if it's a banking system like that, certainly your level of risk is a lot lower because there's not a lot they can do but see how much money you have, really. Or if there is something that they can do, it's kind of a slow process.
What about the Live Free or Die Hard example? The fire sale Die Hard movie, the fourth one, the best one, where the attack is they get in and they wipe out the assets of the bank. Well, what the hell am I supposed to do if whoever I bank with, they're wiped out? Suddenly my balance, I log in and it shows zeros everywhere.
Oh, God, I would vomit.
And everyone who logs into their bank. Is that realistic? Is that possible? And wouldn't that be the kind of thing that if we're going to get attacked by Russia, they would try to do?
Yeah, I would say anything is possible, but the reality of something like that happening is... I could never see. I just couldn't realistically ever see that happening.
Thank God, because I want to stuff our mattresses.
No, yeah, the amount of
It's like, take everything out.
the amount of backups that major banking systems have, and the places that they store them, are unprecedented. I kind of went down the rabbit hole one day of reading about bank security. Specifically, it was Chase Manhattan, where they were talking about where they store offline data. And I mean, it's almost like, what's that, Camp David? It's like almost that level of security where they store certain information, and it's backed up at certain intervals. But yeah, I think that definitely errs on a side of paranoia. Now, that said, I personally don't think it's a bad idea to diversify your investments and have cash in different places. Like, I use some cryptocurrency. I'm involved in a couple of different investments with crypto.
Mattresses, like
mattresses.
Yeah,
diversify.
honestly. Right.
Yeah, and with cryptocurrency, this is kind of interesting too. There's different companies. I use one called Kraken is the name of the place where you can buy and sell your crypto. And they even have two-factor on not just the login, but if you want to buy some, it's a separate two-factor. If you want to sell any, that's another two-factor. So there's all of these different layers of security on cryptocurrency to make sure somebody can't take your stuff.
So what do you think is the more likely scenario then? If the liquidating the bank account one is possible but out there, what's the one that would keep you up at night if you thought, okay, Russia really is coming after us?
I think the thing that would, this gets out of the PC realm and regular computers a bit, but power would be the biggest concern.
The grid.
Yeah, the grid. Yeah. Now I don't know. Again, not an expert enough on how that all functions to say whether or not those systems are as vulnerable as Russia would like us to think. I would say that history has shown that they're pretty sound systems, unless you're in Texas and it's cold weather.
Thinking.
yeah. But that's I think the first form of panic for people is if you're out of power for 2 days, that can be an issue.
Well, what about like the World Wide Web? What about internet servers and our ability to connect to the internet at all?
Elon Musk.
Yeah, so there are primary, we call them nodes across the world, which all are redundant and do the same thing. And basically, when you type in google.com, that name is converted into a number, which takes you to a website. That conversion process that says if you're going to Google, it takes you to this actual server located at this physical address. That's called DNS. If there is enough DNS issues and nodes that are attacked, you can have major internet outages. But their level of redundancy there, again, especially internal to the U.S., is pretty awesome. It's a really, really sound system.
We got some emails here, rad@radradio.com. Michelle says, I have savings in an online savings account, meaning with a bank that isn't brick and mortar, since they tend to have a higher interest rate. I know that the account is FDIC insured, but what does Ian think about the safety of online savings accounts? I've thought about moving that money, which is the emergency fund, to a local credit union, but the interest rates are much lower.
I guess the answer to that would really be it just depends on the dollar amount and how you can access it. Once you start getting to the FDIC insurance limits in your bank account, you really need to consider diversifying a lot more. If you've got, if I were to throw an arbitrary number, less than $50,000 in a savings account, you are still a target if it's that high, but you're not as much of a target as a major corporation with significantly more money. So there are some things you could do as a precaution, but again, that would be your biggest vulnerability would be social engineering, a phishing scam, somebody scamming you, something like that.
Yeah, like listening to everything, I'm starting to, it sounds like to me, we're allowing someone in. We've done something to allow them in. Clicking the wrong link or buying the scam, it sounds like it's more of something we really need to be on the lookout for.
I'll give another one too, just because I can't give all the examples. There's so many, but another one that just came up recently was a coworker of mine. His dad is starting to experience some memory issues, and he got a phone call. He lives alone and in a different city, and he gets this phone call that his son is in jail and he needs money to get bailed out.
We've heard this one.
And there's so many and he almost went for it. It was really close. It was a red flag that kind of made him ask a question. He wasn't sure. Thankfully, he is in a current mental state that I don't think he would have been capable of actually even figuring out how to give the money. But there's just this is again social engineering at its worst, and that is really the most common thing, is always questioning. If somebody called you, you don't know for sure who they are. You can spoof a phone number easy. I can call Dawn and make it say Rob. So those things are very easy to trick people, and you always got to be cautious about.
Well,
that.
and to Dawn's point, I mean, I understand the paranoia and all that, but we only can control what we can control.
Yeah.
And so the things that we can be alert for or do the things that you're talking about, I mean, in the end, and that includes your power grid example.
Yeah.
You know, like growing up in earthquake-riddled Bay Area, I grew up, you know, the son of a guy who always has bottled water, canned goods. So we're always ready for it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but that's something people might want to consider. We got this note from Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Says a lot of the stuff going around Facebook are these posts that ask what your first car was, or your first job, or
Oh,
your first pet's
jeez.
name,
Yes.
or other seemingly innocuous questions.
God.
But they are frequently used for security questions. These posts are a massive data mine for anyone who wants to gain access.
Thank you so much for sending that in, because it's very true. It's another one of those sources. It's actually one of the main reasons why I've pretty much completely stopped posting on Facebook, especially anything significantly personal, because those are, again, it's a social engineering technique. Let's say I went back 10 years in somebody's Facebook history, and I find out that you went out to a place with a person at a time, and then I meet you. You've never met me before, and I say to you, oh man, I met you 10 years ago at this place. You don't even know that that's on your Facebook feed from 10 years ago.
No, you don't.
So imagine what I can do with the right charisma and attitude to get what I want out of you. It's so easy to use that data.
I've seen the same thing about like bumper stickers or kind of advertising things that you're interested in, whether it's physical security, letting people know, oh, my kids play lots of sports, so we're barely home, or these are the types of things I'm personally interested in and mean a lot to me, or things that I reference often.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, I mean, if you have, it all falls back to that social engineering. It's just easy to manipulate somebody if you know anything about them.
Phone number is 888-989-9811. We're with Ian from Tech to You. Hello there, John.
Good morning, guys. Just had a quick question for Ian. Is Tech to You capable of helping anyone that has fallen victim to identity theft sprung from, cyber? I have gone through a couple different outlets trying to help my issue. Just to give a long story short, I had a bank account on my personal bank account. I had another checkings account that was opened, not by me. I've had health insurance started. I've had a bunch of text messages and emails. When I contact these different facilities and ask them, how this information was breached and how these things were open, the only thing that has been told to me is that there was a breach of information with some company that I purchased products through their website.
Yeah.
And there is one company that comes to mind that I purchased a product through their website, but I try to be as, secure with my information as possible. But if there was a breach of, and within their infrastructure and they were able to get my information, I'm just curious as to what I can do at this point to recoup, stop these text messages and emails and get this leech off of me, basically.
Yeah, so I'm sorry to hear that. It's so first off, we are certainly more on the proactive side of things rather than the retroactive. What we can do after something like that is sort of a security assessment of what you're using your PCs and your phone for, what your logins look like, what kind of security we can improve for you to reduce those chances. There are companies that specialize in sort of the mitigation of those types of situations. I wish I could think of a name off the top of my head, but I know that if you look up, like, I'm a victim of, I forget the name of it. It's escaping my
Just identity theft?
Yeah, identity theft. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of services that are provided for that type of thing. Now, that said, one of the suggestions I can give is that if you create an account with the major 3 credit bureaus, as far as I know, all 3 of them allow you to lock your account, and
you can freeze it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure all 3 do. I know at least Experian.
I know for sure from personal experience with someone in our family, because someone had got access to oh God, was it part of their social? But they didn't have their name.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were notified. Nothing happened, but they recommended they freeze,
Yep.
and they could unfreeze it at any time as well if they were going to, apply for a loan or this or that. So it's just frozen if anyone tries to open anything in their name.
And that's another one of those examples of inconvenient when you need to go do something.
Yeah.
But incredibly convenient if somebody tries to get into your credit account. And that is how something like what this gentleman was talking about would happen is that they obviously applied for a bank account. They applied for credit. And in order to do that, they need information like your social security number, first and last name, address, and those security questions that this person just emailed about where, what's your first car and, first dog and all of those things. They it's not incredibly hard if somebody wants to target you.
We got this question from Jess.
Hey, Jess.
Says, I work for a company that's been a victim of a cyber hack and having all of our info encrypted and paying a ransom to get it all back.
Oh, God.
We have made strides to ensure stronger security, but we have found areas that our IT has said is secure and it's not. Or finding servers that were being used and not secure, and IT was unaware the server even existed. Does Tech2U do security audits to evaluate where vulnerabilities are?
What a wonderful lead. Yes, absolutely we do. In fact, we do free audits. So our team that specializes in business environments will do an audit of your environment, identify any existing security risks, any performance issues. A lot of times we'll go in and say, oh, man, you have all this high end equipment and it's all bottlenecked through this $50 switch that's slowing everything down. So yeah, that is very common. And as far as the security side of things is concerned, I don't know that there's ever been a time that we've done an assessment where we didn't have a whole list of security suggestions.
So IT guys hate to see you coming because you're always like, yeah, this department's not doing their job.
think that they love us. But,
Hello, Ryan. Go ahead.
Hey, so I'm an Android and a PC user, Windows, and I'm trying to find out what's the best app I can use for my password protection that I can get access to on my computer and my phone.
I recommend a company called LastPass. They have a free version, and then they have a paid version, which lets you synchronize between devices. There's a lot of them out there. I've used them for 3 years or so, and I've been pretty happy with it.
We got this note from Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Says, over the weekend, someone hacked my Chipotle app and spent $500 on food using my card that was linked to the app. How the hell do I avoid that?
Oh, God.
So I don't know if Chipotle offers two-factor authentication. So this actually links to kind of a different topic. Rob and I have talked about this a little bit off air. If you have a PayPal account, or if you have a Venmo, or anything like that, anything that connects to your bank, anything that can Cash App, anything. What's happening is when you put in your bank account ACH information, your routing number, your account number, you're giving unadulterated access to your money. So you have to consider that those are kind of those are actually worse to have than just the bank login itself, because they're easier to get access to and they're easier to take money directly from your bank and send it off somewhere.
Doesn't that also apply though to credit cards that we have online? Sure. If you have DoorDash and Instacart and all that.
Yep.
And those they can just run up to the limit.
Oh my God, I'm getting rid of all of it.
So anywhere that you put, credit cards, certainly. Credit cards are a little less of a concern, only because if you have a good credit card company, they'll protect you in the event of fraud. That's why you should always use your credit card whenever you're making purchases. Yeah. Especially if it's a major credit card, you can protect yourself significantly. Don't put your debit card information, if you have a credit card, in anything if you can avoid it. And again, avoid connecting your bank account information directly if possible. If you have to, say for example, you have to connect your bank account information to your city account for paying your water and garbage bill, and they say, well, it's cheaper if you just connect your routing number and your account number. If you type that information in and then you get to go back and say, oh yeah, I want to see the full account number and routing number to make sure it's right, that's a huge problem. That means anybody can log into that account and see your account number and routing number.
Does the same thing apply for like car insurance and your cell phone company? Because that's how I do it. They just take everything out of my account monthly.
Yeah, so it's good practice to have them come out of a credit card if possible, not only for the financial benefit, but also the security side of things. Yeah, if possible, you want to try and have those come directly out of a card. That again, you can call your bank and say this was fraud. Your bank is not going to work with you on the same level if it came directly out of your checking account.
If someone is going to change, because I think I have one thing that does use a bank card, I'm going to change that. But immediately get off here. But do they still have that info then? The minute you change it to a credit card?
That's a great question.
Yeah, but
you don't know the answer to that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and none of us will. So it depends on how they store their data. Like I'll just give an example. Let's say that when I was creating RADTV accounts with Jeff when we were doing testing, we probably made 30 of them for the initial testing. Well, when we were done, we just disabled the accounts. We don't go through and delete them. There's no point in, and actually even like on a database level, it doesn't really make sense to delete data like that. So that said, in our case, we're not storing credit card information.
Aren't you though?
We're not actually. Thankfully, this is worth noting. We use a merchant who securely stores that information. Tech to you get to be in happy hands knowing that I don't get to hold that data, but a merchant who's much more capable gets to. But as far as data like that, when it comes from the developer's perspective, it's a lot easier for us to not delete data, but to rather quote unquote mark it as deleted.
Yeah.
So the data is still there. I would make the assumption that it is still in their database, but it would be far less of a risk in most cases, like especially if somebody gained access to that account.
Because now they're using the credit card on file as opposed to bank card, because that's not on file to use anymore.
That's right. Yeah.
We got this one from Jessica. Says, I keep getting calls from Amazon, quote unquote, saying they want to talk to me about a possible breach to my account, and there was a $700 charge they need me to verify and press 1. I just hang up, and there is never a charge on my account.
So I'm going to give one other tip, and this isn't one that works for everybody, but on my cell phone, I have 2 phone numbers. So you can, in most modern cell phones, you can go to your cell provider and say, I want a second phone number, and I want both of them to ring and receive text messages. One of the phone numbers, everybody knows. I give it out all over the place. Everybody's aware of it. The other phone number, nobody knows. I use it for very secure functions, for banking, for things like that, so that, again, it mitigates the likelihood of being exposed to some form of social engineering, because this number is something nobody knows. Even an email address. This is another great tip is don't give the email address that you gave to your cousin to send over your recipe for something to your bank to log in with. The email account you log into your bank with, no one should even know exists. No one but your bank.
We got this story from Kelly. Says, I recently was scammed while attempting to fix my HBO Max login. I went to a site that I thought was HBO's. I called the number on the site, and the guy went through several processes and eventually had me download an app so that he could see my phone. He had me go to my Amazon to verify my identity. By the time I realized what he was doing, he had purchased a $100 gift card. I immediately hung up and attempted to take the app off my phone. I could tell he still had access. I was able to get the money back, but lesson learned.
I can tell you that there's almost no limit to the level of creativity that people will come up with to steal from you. And if you ever are approached, always question it as authentic. And the easiest way you can do that is stop either the phone call, the email string, the conversation, and literally call tech to you. I can't tell you how many people call us and just have a question, and our dispatchers are knowledgeable enough on these situations to say, no, don't proceed. We will answer that question for you. We'll tell you if it's a red flag.
Can we also just set up a rule? Stop answering the goddamn phone.
That's good.
I mean, that would stop a lot of this.
You know what? I hate how easy it is for these son of a bitches to steal. When I was a kid and hungry as hell, we used to have to be sneaky and quiet and reach into people's pockets. You guys have no idea.
Question you would expect from a portion of our audience came in from Alec. Says, an actual honest question. How dangerous are porn sites? I figure with the nature of what goes on, they actually might be secure. Is that true?
They're not as bad as the stigma would say, but yeah, they're not good because the majority of them make their money from ad revenue. And so, just as without getting into the weeds too much, if I own any website and I want to fund it, I'm going to sell an ad to be on the website, and I want to sell as many as possible. So I'm not going to discriminate. I'm just going to let whoever wants to put whatever, and then when they put an ad up, of course, the point of an ad is to have a link that you click on that goes to another website. Well, that link can be malicious. But on top of that, just the ad itself loading in the browser can give you a virus. Just the ad itself. So having a pop-up blocker can be huge, just so you prevent those basic attacks from coming through.
And also, if you're a regular user, staying with the mainstream porn sites is always a really good idea.
Great suggestion.
Hello there, Joanne. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
I had a file sharing program on my computer for music and whatnot, and I was told that my accounts or whatever, because I was stupid enough to put them on an Excel spreadsheet, were found by somebody Google dorking. Does that sound right?
They Googled what?
Dorking? Google hacks? Google dorking?
I can't say that I'm personally familiar with the phrase. What was it that they'd gotten into exactly? You said a
Because I had a file sharing program and I didn't specify what files to share. It opened up everything on my computer.
God.
Okay.
Whoa.
I understand.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah.
What
So, okay.
Oh,
That's awful.
that is.
There's a lot of these programs. I'll try and list some of the big names. So there's Google Drive, there's OneDrive. These are OneDrive. It comes integrated in the new versions of Windows, and it basically says
Is Dropbox one of them?
Dropbox, great example. They say put your files here, and they're accessible on your computer, but they're also accessible from your phone and your other computer, and it synchronizes. You can on some of those applications specify what folders you want to synchronize. And some of them will allow you to synchronize quite literally everything on the computer. And so if they do, and someone gains access to one of those accounts through one of the many ways that can be done, then they have access to every single file that's on your computer. And she gave a great example. She kept her passwords in an Excel file. I just a few minutes ago said that I cracked one of those for a customer. It's not even hard. It took us like 5 minutes. So yeah, leaving any one of the common things that I saw for a long time was I'll put the passwords on a folder on my desktop, and I'll call it recipes, and I'll have legitimate recipes in there, and I'll mix it in. And that actually worked pretty well, I think, for a long time. But,
Until somebody figured it out.
Yeah, we started talking about it. And so now we have much more sophisticated methods of identifying what data is on your computer, because we can just do a scan and look at the contents of the files on your computer and look for things like password and username, and we can find those files very quickly.
I'm leaning toward on a piece of paper in the safe because no one's hacking that.
No, they
But,
won't.
Yeah.
Hello there, Jeff. Go ahead.
Good morning. So my question would be, all the scam calls we get, can we actually give away something to the scammers by just answering the phone, even though we don't give them any information?
That is a wonderful question. Yeah, you can. I would say that probably the most valuable thing that you can give them by just answering as a confirmation of what your name is. I've had my cell phone number for 20 years, and the person who had it before me, I still somehow get calls for. I don't know how that's, but anyway, I get calls, and sometimes they ask for this guy, and I know immediately this is either a scam or a sales call of some kind. It's most likely a scam. But even if they say, "Hi, is this Ian?" I just say, "Who is this?" Right. That's my first response, is trying to figure out who you are. And that's if I don't adhere to Rob's advice, which is not answering the phone at all, is also great practice. You can leave a voicemail. So yeah, generally speaking, if you don't recognize the number, if you're waiting on a call from a bank for approval for the loan or whatever it is, there's important calls we all wait for. But if you're not, and it can go to voicemail, it's not bad practice to let it do that. Yeah.
Okay, so this is within the realm, but it's kind of a weird question. Follow me. So I have a friend who was stationed in Kuwait early last year, and when he had gotten there, they told him, okay, use WhatsApp for calls or whatever, because it's encrypted.
Yeah.
And so I would talk to him on the phone on there. One time he accidentally called me from his regular number just out of force of habit. Mm-hmm. He hung up right away. 5 minutes later, I remember telling you this, Rob, I got a call from a Russian number. Mm-hmm. And then I obviously didn't answer it, but I hadn't ever gotten anything since then. But theoretically, what do you think caused that, and what would have happened had I answered it?
Damn.
If he was calling internationally, I would say that the easiest thing is that the floodgates kind of open with international calls.
Okay.
Yeah. So if he was in Kuwait, I don't know a ton about the international phone systems, how they work, but I do know how we secure our phone systems, and I would not be surprised to hear that international systems might not be as secure, or that there's difference in security protocols where a lapse could exist, so that if you make a call from outside of the country to inside of the USA, that's sort of available for people to see.
There's a team of Russian hackers who are monitoring that, and they immediately get the phone number. And maybe they try to then initiate some type of scam call.
So when I mentioned earlier that I have 2 phone numbers, one of the things I asked for from my cell phone provider was, hey, this second phone number that you give me, I want to make sure that it's an uncirculated number. You can request that. They won't always have it, but if you can get an uncirculated number, that's huge. Because there's no existing information around this number. It's not listed in any databases anywhere. And as soon as you get an uncirculated number, the likelihood of you getting any kind of a scam call is mitigated considerably. So that's the phone number that I use for those very secure functions, and that isn't shared.
Just how clever they could be, because we have a family member that is retired, and I guess at some point in our history, at least for them in their working history, you didn't have to give to Social Security. You could choose to just invest that money yourself. And that's what this family member did. So they've never given to Social Security and then since retired. Well, Social Security sends a letter, and this person does call. And as they finally put me in on this to help, I'm like, you didn't even give to Social Security.
Yeah.
Why did you call? But it's like the enticement of the letter, of what they were promising, and then on the phone how they're talking, and I'm like, hang up right now. Like, you didn't even give into the system. They are not giving you anything. Why are they going to give you something when you never gave to them? But just the way they'll talk to them, and especially older people, right? Just the make it sound like you're going to, they just woo you. And it's just like, my God.
I don't want to overwhelm Tech to You with questions of scams that we don't even provide help for, but I do want to help people. And I would say that if you get something like that, please feel free to ask us. I have friends who have started businesses recently, and Rob, I'm certain you've seen these. You know those scams that come in the mail where they say the U.S. government requires you have posters posted inside of your business for all of your employees to see, and then you need to pay us $180 to have that poster shipped, and it looks like it's a letter from the California state.
They are so official looking.
Right? And every time I get one, I'm like, oh, no. What is this? And then you have to kind of go down to the bottom to see, oh, this is not a government. If they're even borderline legitimate, it's going to say this is not sponsored from the government, But then there are the far more malicious ones that just try to send you a letter that says, this is the IRS. Here's what you owe us. Here's the number you need to call. It's printed on what looks like an IRS dot matrix old printer, and it all looks so real. If you get one of those and you're not sure, feel free to please call us and ask, because I can tell you there's so many keywords and phrases that stand out to us because we've seen it so many times, whether or not something is legitimate.
So last thing, get full circle here. What about just your general opinion about what's going on with Ukraine and Russia?
Man.
And I know you've been consuming a lot of it.
Yeah, I will say, I don't think I've had so many ninjas chopping onions reactions in the last. Watching Zelensky stand up, that's been cool.
Yeah.
But as a consumer of the only social media I really consume is Reddit, and I go there for a lot of the fresh kind of raw information that comes out.
It's raw.
It is man, it's crazy to see. One of the things that I love though, and just brings so much joy to my heart, is I'm watching private companies do what they can to help. I don't know if you've talked about it, but Elon Musk sending Starlink
I
devices.
loved that. I was like, oh my God, that's
No, it was so
badass.
And
cool.
he got it there in 48 hours.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Amazing.
But there's private satellite companies that do satellite imagery as a business, and they were the ones who initially identified that convoy coming into Kiev. And they're providing that information. Then there's so much more that they're giving that we're not hearing about.
Right.
And I love to see that the nerds like us can actually provide some support. Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here, Ian, and answering so many questions. Ian from Tech to You.